Home Digital FM 99.9 in Brikama Town. For all the businessmen and women, move out of the darkness, follow the light. Come sell your business with us today. Home Digital FM, let your customers know what you're offering. Be on top of your competitors. Home Digital FM, we will help you stand out. Come advertise with us today for all your businesses. We offer live program coverage both on Facebook Live and on the radio. Exos to sell your products and services. The media is in control. Tell your customers when, where, and how to meet you through Home Digital FM. Don't worry. Do your business. We will sell you out. Call us today on 734-3125 or 200-5770 620-1413 766-8394. Home Digital FM. Follow the light.
Africa This Week, a new program that features and analyzes all the top news and events that took place across the continent during the week, is coming on Home Digital FM. The 1-hour Week in Review program will exhibit experts and commentators to look back on the news of the past 7 days and break down stories and issues across Africa that everyone is talking about. Africa This Week will feature Guest of the Week and engage people at the center of every key news, every story, in the best interactive, entertaining, and informative way possible. Africa This Week on Home Digital FM 99.9 every Saturday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. starting from next Saturday, October 22nd. Africa This Week with me, Bojang Jnr. See you there. Hello and a very warm welcome to your Week in Review program, Africa This Week, looking at the continent's top stories over the last 7 days. Coming up in this edition, at least 4 soldiers arrested in the Gambia as authorities said they have foiled a military plan to overthrow the government of Adama Barrow.
He collected the money and wanted to come back, was about to come back home. Then he was told that there is a letter for him at the office, which he was supposed to collect. When he went to collect that letter, that was where they told him that he was under arrest for capital offense.
In another development, police arrested Momodu Sabali, the campaign manager of the main opposition United Democratic Party and fierce critic of the Barrow administration. We'll hear from his lawyer.
There may be forces, there may be political forces, because of the nature of Sabali, because of the political clout that he has in this country, that perhaps in order to restrict his ability to speak, that you frame some malicious, politically motivated charge or charges against him, perhaps charges that may deny him bail, where he may have to go to prison. I am not saying that would happen, but it is not improbable.
protest in Liberia over soaring costs of living.
This government has deliberately refused to listen to the cry of the citizen, because on several occasions we have gathered to cry on this government, but the government deliberately refused to listen to our call.
And ahead of Nigeria's general elections next year, the Electoral Commission reaffirmed its determination to prevent vote buying. Elsewhere on the continent, a former head of Cameroon's public broadcaster sentenced to 12 years in prison after being in detention for more than 6 years, and his trial inexplicably adjourned more than 100 times. Kenya's President William Ruto told his country's police officers to ignore unlawful orders and stay away from politics as he announced a presidential task force to lead the process of instigating police reforms.
Instructions that are not grounded in law or the constitutions, you should respectfully ignore such instructions and follow what the constitution and the law says. We don't need the assistance of the police in managing our politics.
In our human interest segment, Liberia's hip-hop artists turned to a new genre of music to take on the out-of-touch politicians and speak out against corruption and mismanagement. Also coming up, our special guest, a Senegalese man who unsuccessfully applied for a US visa 3 times and spent 5 months raising money for air ticket after finally acquiring his visa, then became a strong pillar for President Barack Obama and reinventing himself as a celebrity entrepreneur and a global brand.
The whole time I was working on the visa, I forgot to deal with the ticket though. So I have the visa January 18th that evening. January, February, March, April, till May 25th, I couldn't find the ticket. 5 months in the country. Believe me, on those 5 months, every single day on those 5 months, we go somewhere, we hurt somebody, I have some money, me and my mom. And we borrowed, and they said no, no. All I heard is no for 5 months.
In sports, heroes welcome for Morocco's Atlas Lions as they returned home from the World Cup in Qatar. These and more in today's program. Stay with us.
Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama.
Sheriff Bojang Jnr.
Thanks for joining us. We start at home in the Gambia, where the authorities Wednesday said they have foiled a plan by soldiers to overthrow the government of Adama Barrow. In a statement, the government said the Armed Forces High Command arrested 4 soldiers linked to the alleged coup after a military operation on Tuesday. The statement said, based on intelligence reports, some soldiers of the Gambian army were plotting to overthrow the democratically elected government, adding that the army was in pursuit of 3 other alleged accomplices and investigations were ongoing. In an updated statement, the authorities named the Lance Corporal Sana Fadera, a Navy officer, as the alleged ringleader of the alleged failed coup plot. He is one of the soldiers arrested. The authorities did not give details. Another soldier arrested over the alleged plot is Ibrahima Sano. His brother, Dr. Moro Emel Ture, spoke to me about the circumstances of his arrest.
Ibrahima Sano was arrested at the Yundum barracks. What happened was that on Tuesday, he wanted to buy rice for his wife, but unfortunately was not having enough money. So he decided to go to Yundum barracks, to the credit union there, to get some money to buy rice for his wife. So that was where he was arrested. He collected the money and wanted to come back, was about to come back home. Then he was told that there is a letter for him at the office, which he was supposed to collect. When he went to collect that letter, that was where they told him that he was under arrest for capital offense.
And do we know whether this was the army that told him that he was under arrest?
Well, that is what we do not know at the moment, but there were 2 statements on the 21st. Those statements stated that some members of the army, and they couldn't tell their first names, were involved in the coup, and they are looking for them. If you look at that statement, you will definitely know that the leadership of the Gambia Armed Forces were not involved, or they've not contributed to that statement, because it is not possible for the leadership of the Gambia Armed Forces to not know the names of their soldiers.
Before Ibrahima was named by the government in the press statement that he was among the soldiers that were arrested, did you or any other family member knew about the arrest before that government statement mentioned his name?
Well, I did not know exactly when the governments actually made that, but what actually happened was Ibrahim failed to come back home because the wife was waiting for him to bring the money to buy rice.
Do you know which day was this? Because the government statement came out on Wednesday.
This was on Tuesday. The family waited, he did not return. So in the evening, they said, okay, let's try to find out. Because obviously, if your husband and your father went out to get money for, to buy food for the family and did not come back, you will definitely make follow-ups to find out what exactly is wrong. It was during that process that we were informed that, in fact, Ibrahim has been detained. They seized his phone. So what happened was somebody in there actually did favors to give him the phone to call us, to let my family, to let them know that he has been detained for capital offense. And up to yesterday evening, Ibrahim has not been informed as to what capital offense he has been arrested for.
And yesterday evening is Thursday evening, because I'm doing this interview on Friday.
Yes. Exactly. He's not been interrogated. He has not been interviewed.
Have you or any other family member had access to Ibrahim since he was arrested?
Well, on the first day, yes. And the first and the second day, yes, we had access to him. But since then, now they said they've not allowed any visits.
And what was his condition when family members had access to him?
Up to Wednesday.
Yeah. What was his condition?
Well, he was there for the first 24 hours. He was not given any food. He was not given any drink, and in solitary confinement at Yundumbara.
And did the authorities formally contact you, his family?
They have not contacted us. No one contacted us up to date. We want to have access to him. We want to know what his conditions are. And we also want to know what the government is doing.
Dr. Moro ML Toure, brother of Ibrahim Sano, one of the soldiers arrested and detained over this week's alleged plot to overthrow the government of the Gambia. Meanwhile, the police on Wednesday arrested Momodu Sabali, the campaign manager of the main opposition United Democratic Party, after initially inviting him for questioning. The police did not say why Sabali was arrested, but in a Facebook post, it said he was smoothly undergoing the investigation process and that he was granted all permission to legal representation. We are now joined by Sabali's wife, Jaysar, for details about his arrest.
On Wednesday, at around a few minutes to 5 o'clock, I got a phone call from him, and he just told me that the police were at the house and they had invited him for questioning. But while they were there, they also got orders that he should be arrested right away. So there was even a little bit of a scuffle between them and my siblings and my nephew. But then, he just agreed to go with them, and that was that. Since then, it's like he was transferred to 2 different locations, and he has been detained since Wednesday.
And have you had access, including unlimited access to him, since his arrest?
Well, it was difficult, but now at least we can take him his lunch and his clothes and the basics that he needs there.
And then news just emerged on the social media that the High Court has granted permission to the security authorities to detain him longer. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I've also just been given that information, and I am understanding that they're detaining him up to January 5th. This is a court extension given by the court, and it hasn't even been told to him. He is not aware of that at this point. So I've never heard of such a thing, because my understanding is that after 72 hours, somebody should be granted bail or taken to court. And the 72 hours is supposed to elapse tomorrow. And now I'm hearing about this court extension, which I've really never heard about. I don't even know if it is something that is in our law books, actually.
And Jay, what are your concerns or your worst fears for him at this moment?
I'm just really concerned about his health. I'm concerned about his safety because I feel like the government is unfairly detaining him, and they have no grounds. Because from what I'm hearing is the detention is a result of a video clip he made while he was giving a motivational speech to some youths, and of which the government completely took out of context and only honed in on about a few seconds of the whole conversation, taking everything out of context and wanting to use that to pin this man down. It doesn't make any sense. And we can tell that this government, the government of President Adama Barrow, is now taking the law into their own hands. It's really eroding everything that this transition has been about. And he has gone rogue. Let me tell you, the government of Adama Barrow has gone rogue in this country, and Gambians are not going to sit and allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. I fear the worst for him, but I'm still holding on to hope that there is a smidge of decency in our president, that he will do the right thing, and I hope he doesn't prove me wrong.
And Jay, it seems Sabally is a thorn in the flesh of this government. Would you say this arrest and detention is another spirited campaign of the state or by the state to silence him?
Yeah, certainly. I would definitely say that. I think they've tried in all sorts of ways to do that, and this is just one more. But what is even wrong and more dangerous is the angle that they are taking to try to pin him down, to try to silence his voice. I think the voices of dissent should be encouraged so that the president understands what's happening, what's wrong in this country, so that the government understands what's wrong in this country. But silencing all opposition, no, I don't think that is a healthy country that we can live in as Gambians.
Jay Sar, the wife of detained opposition UDP campaign manager Mamadou Sabally. And for more on the detention of Sabally, here is his lawyer Abdullahi Fati.
Sabally was arrested on Wednesday at around 5 p.m. I was notified shortly afterwards, and I went to the PIU headquarters in Kanifing to have access to him. And I arrived there around 7 p.m. When I requested to see my client, that I understood he was arrested, and I needed to see him. The officer, the low-ranking PIU that I found went inside to inquire, later came back and said that I couldn't see him at that particular time because they weren't ready. I protested that as his counsel, that was his constitutional entitlement, and that there should not have been any delay whatsoever in him having access to his lawyer. So I asked for probably the officer responsible, and shortly afterwards, one ASP Sar, who I must say was very helpful, came. He went inside, came back, and again told me that I couldn't see him at that particular time. Again, I protested, but that there should not have been any delay. But he asked me to wait. I waited. About 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, I was escorted in, and I had an opportunity to meet with my client.
And what was his condition, or what was he doing when you met him?
When I arrived at the hall where Sabally was, he actually found him praying. You know, he finished his prayers, and then there was like a panel of police investigators, and they wanted to interrogate him. And I told them that since I was fair, before they took any further step, that it was appropriate that I had access to my clients in terms of consultation. So I requested that before they asked him any further question, that I wanted to speak to my client and consult with him, which they granted. So, I moved to decide with Sabally, and we had about a 15-20 minute consultation, and we came back and the proceedings continued.
Did the authorities tell you why he was arrested and being detained? What was he being questioned about?
So essentially, Sabali hasn't been charged with any crime up to now, but the gist of his arrest and detention is in relation to a statement contained in an audio. On the 14th of this month, some UDP youth TikTokers visited him at his residence in Kering. So he was addressing that group, saying that there was going to be a massive, aggressive UDP mobilization in order to form a majority. So essentially what he was trying to say was that by forming a majority in a democracy, then you had legitimacy, and particularly made reference to the upcoming local government elections in 2023. And he particularly mentioned, or specifically mentioned, the mayors of Banjul and KM in relation to their achievements since assuming office. So in essence, the whole rationale and the context of the statements that Mr. Sabali made was in relation to political mobilization to form a majority, and by forming a majority, that you were seizing power through democratic means from the incumbent. The entire audio is just under 11 minutes, but 19 seconds of that was extracted into a standalone segment, and it is that standalone edited version that is circulating on social media, in which the only thing that people can hear is that Mbabanko Talabul. So it is completely taken and blown out of proportion when separated from the entire context, the entire audio. He did not in any way try to say that he was suggesting or propagating or instigating any unlawful change of regime whatsoever. But the whole transaction in terms of the interview seemed to have centered primarily on that issue, because the police wanted to clarify what he meant by Mbabonko Talabule.
Do you have any concern at all about his welfare, what may happen to him? Would you say this whole arrest and detention is politically motivated?
I'm very much concerned about his welfare, because I don't think he should have been detained longer than is necessary. I think everything has been blown out of proportion. And I believe there may be forces, there may be political forces, because of the nature of Sabali, because of the political clout that he has in this country, that perhaps in order to restrict his ability to speak, that you frame some malicious, politically motivated charge or charges against him, perhaps charges that may deny him bail, where he may have to go to prison. I am not saying that would happen, but it is not improbable, and that would be motivated by politics. So I am deeply concerned at the direction that this is taken.
Abdullahi Fati, a lawyer representing detained UDP campaign manager Momodu Sabali. Still in the Gambia, a parliamentary committee on Tuesday recommended that the Indian pharmaceutical company, whose cough and cold syrups have been linked to the death of at least 70 children, be banned and prosecuted. In October, the World Health Organization issued an alert over 4 syrups made by Maiden Pharmaceuticals based in northern India may be linked to the deaths of young Gambian children who died from acute kidney injuries. The findings, announced by WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, followed tests on several medicinal syrups that were suspected of causing 66 child deaths in the Gambia at the time. The Gambia has already recalled all cough and cold syrups in circulation in the country, as well as all pharmaceutical products manufactured by Maiden Pharmaceuticals, whose production plant in India has been shut down. The company reportedly denies any wrongdoing, but the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health accused Maiden Pharmaceutical Limited of exporting contaminated products to the Gambia. Lawmaker Amadou Kamara is the chairperson of the committee.
Having received several evidence from different stakeholders, both in the public and private sectors, including parents of the victims of AKI, the Select Committee concludes that all the cases of the AKI are linked to the consumption of the contaminated medical products imported by Atlantic Pharmaceutical and manufactured by Maiden Pharmaceutical Limited, India. The actual cause of the death of these children is still under scientific investigations, as causality tests are currently being undertaken by the Ministry of Health and partners. The Select Committee is convinced that Median Pharmaceutical Limited is culpable and should be held accountable for exporting the contaminated medicine that was linked to the death of at least 70 children in the Gambia in 2022. All products should be subjected to screening before release into the market for distribution and use. This will ensure that what is ordered is what is delivered to avoid what happened in the case of the Atlantic Pharmacy.
That was Amadou Camara, a Gambian lawmaker and chairperson of the Gambian Parliamentary Select Committee on Health. From the Gambia to Liberia, hundreds of protesters in Liberia on Saturday gathered in Monrovia to protest against soaring costs of living, a day before President George Weah returned from a 48-day trip abroad. The protest was organized by the coalition of collaborating parties and opposition alliance, but reports of an internal scuffle kept only the opposition Alternative National Congress ANC in the fold. Here is a soundbite of the protest, courtesy of Reuters.
We gather here today to draw the attention of the international community because this government is adamant. This government has deliberately refused to listen to the cry of the citizen. Because on several occasions, we have gathered to cry on this government, but the government deliberately refused to listen to our call. So for this reason, we have gathered here today peacefully as a citizen of this nation that is going through torment from the hands of George Weah.
We want a Liberia where every Liberian will be guaranteed the same opportunity. What you do with that opportunity is up to you, but you'll be guaranteed the same opportunity. A Liberia where we will stop the suffering, where we will stop the stealing.
Liberian protesters in Monrovia. Senegalese authorities have rearrested investigative journalist Pape Alé Niang less than a week after his release on bail. Niang, director of the privately owned website Dakar Matin, was initially arrested in early November, criminally charged over a video report, and released on bail with various conditions on Wednesday, December 14. After his rearrest on Monday, a judge on Wednesday ordered Niang's return to prison for allegedly violating one of his bail conditions. Media reports and his lawyer, Sire Cledo-Lee, said the authorities alleged the violation occurred when Niang discussed his ongoing prosecution during a Facebook Live broadcast last Saturday. Ahead of Nigeria's general elections next year, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has reaffirmed its determination to prevent vote buying. Speaking at a stakeholder summit in Abuja Monday, INEC chairperson Mahmoud Yakubu said the commission harbored no illusion that it was going to be easy to root out the negative influence of money on the election, but would always be determined to tackle it. He told the summit why the elections shouldn't be influenced by money.
The negative role of money in elections goes to the very heart of our democracy. It destroys the very basis of democratic elections, which is that citizens should freely choose those who exercise power on their behalf. It renders the emergence of the right candidates for positions extremely difficult, undermines fair electoral adjudication, and destroys the professional and independent conduct of INEC officials and other public agencies involved in elections. Even more worrisome is the high prospect that criminal money may find its way into our elections through money laundering. Above all, pernicious use of money tremendously increases the likelihood of election violence due to a win-at-all-cost mentality among contestants who have invested a fortune in election. Surely, election is not a business venture for profit.
Mahmoud Yakubu, the chairperson of Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The minority leader of Ghana's parliament, Haruna Idrisu, said the parliament has contributed to the country's current economic crisis and it must take responsibility. He attributed the crisis to excessive borrowing, especially by the government, and blamed the parliament for failing to restrain the authorities. Idrisu was speaking during a co-leadership conference organized by the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs in Accra.
Today, Ghana has an economic crisis, a crisis which is only similar to what pertained in the country in 1983. How did we get there? Excessive borrowing. Who ought to have checked government not to borrow or overborrow? The Parliament of Ghana. So Parliament must accept some blame and some responsibility in not keeping the executive to check. The consequences of excessive borrowing is now being felt by all of us when you hear an animal called a debt exchange initiative. It is affecting businesses, it's affecting public enterprises because they cannot run well, it's affecting the private sector. So Parliament's role as defender of the people's interests is lost.
The minority leader of Ghana's parliament, Haruna Idrisu. Meanwhile, Ghana has suspended payments on most of its foreign debts, effectively defaulting as the country starts restructuring as part of a bailout deal with the International Monetary Fund. The Finance Ministry said Monday that it would suspend service payments of its Eurobonds, commercial loans, and most bilateral loans. Calling the decision an interim emergency measure, the ministry said the government was ready to engage in discussions with all of its external creditors to make Ghana's debt sustainable. You are listening to Africa This Week on Home Digital with me, Serif Bojang Jnr. A reminder of our top stories. At least 4 soldiers arrested in the Gambia as authorities said they have foiled a plan by soldiers to overthrow the government of Adama Barrow. In another development, police arrested Mamadou Sabali, the campaign manager of the main opposition United Democratic Party and fierce critic of the Barrow administration. And protest in Liberia over soaring costs of living. Still ahead in the program, Kenya's President Ruto told his country's police officers to ignore unlawful orders and stay away from politics as he announced a presidential task force to lead the process of instigating police reforms. We also have sports and more. Stay with us.
Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama.
Now to Cameroon, where a special criminal court in the capital Yaoundé Tuesday sentenced the former head of the public broadcaster to 12 years in prison for embezzling money and awarding staff salary bonuses without authorization. Amadou Vamolke, the former managing director of Cameroon Radio and Television CRTV, was also fined 47 million francs CFA or $76,000. He was sentenced after being in detention for more than 6 years and his trial inexplicably adjourned more than 100 times. Valmoke, 73, was arrested under Operation Sparrowhawk, which critics said has been used by President Paul Biya's government to lock up people seen as problematic. A lawyer who represented him at the beginning of the trial, Alice Nkom, said the whole case was political and illegal. Global Media Watchdog Committee to Protect Journalists has called on the Ethiopian police to unconditionally release online journalist Maskerem Abera and cease harassing members of the press. Federal police detained Abera, the founder and editor of private YouTube-based media outlet Ethiopia Media, in the capital Addis Ababa on December 13, according to her husband. On December 15, a federal high court extended her detention by 14 days for police to investigate allegations that she incited violence, disseminated misinformation, and defamed the military through Ethiopia Media and social media platforms. She is due back in court on December 29th. CPJ described her arrest and detention as highly disappointing and said she should be allowed to continue her work without further interference. Abera was held for weeks following her first arrest in May in relation to a similar accusation, but was never formally charged. In what seemed to be a political survival, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has won a second 5-year term as the leader of the ruling African National Congress ANC and will lead the party into the 2024 elections. Ramaphosa went into the crucial ANC Congress with the Farmgate scandal hanging over his head. But despite that, he received 2,476 votes for the post of party president against 1,897 for former Health Minister Zweli Mkhize. After the vote, Ramaphosa called on the ANC members to unite against what he called detractors.
We came from different provinces, different branches, holding different views and indeed different mandates of who needs to be chosen to lead this organization. We also came with different proposals on the policies that should be pursued, but as always, we've ended up as a united organization, much to the surprise of those who don't wish us well. There have, yes, been attempts to divide us, to provoke us, and to divert us from the tasks that we must undertake in advancing our national democratic revolution. There have been moments at this conference that have tested our unity and cohesion. But I can testify to the fact that this conference is going to continue solidifying our unity and our cohesion as the African National Congress.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Kenyan President William Ruto on Wednesday announced the constitution of a presidential task force to lead the process of instigating police reforms in Kenya. It was Ruto's campaign promise in August that he would implement far-reaching restructurings in the police service to improve the welfare of all police officers. The new task force will have the mandate of revisiting and revising the terms of service of all police officers working under Kenya's National Police Service (NPS). Addressing the police force in Nairobi, Ruto called on the officers to ignore unlawful orders, warning that it wasn't the job of the police to manage Kenya's politics.
Instructions that are not grounded in law or the constitutions, you should respectfully ignore such instructions and follow what the Constitution and the law says. We don't need the assistance of the police in managing our politics. And we are going to work with you to make sure that men and women who serve in our police service are proud of being the men and women who look after our children, who look after our property, and who provide that service that secures our country.
Kenya's President William Ruto. From news and current affairs to our human interest segment, this week we head to Liberia to meet its young hip-hop stars who created a new genre of music to speak out against the wrongs of the Liberian society, especially corruption, poverty, and mismanagement.
I will speak for my people, speak. I will speak for my people, speak. I want change for my people, change.
In 2003, Liberia's brutal civil war officially came to an end. Though the following years witnessed the silence of the guns, the fracture caused by the war continues to exist. Corruption, injustice, and social inequalities are some of the biggest challenges facing post-war Liberia. During the conflict, warring factions and warlords turned teenagers into child soldiers and used them to fight their wars. These child soldiers are now adults, and most of them are traumatized and abandoned, while many of those whose war they fought are living large and rich. These issues are not priorities for Liberia's politicians. Therefore, the young rappers in the country came together a few years ago to create their own genre of music to speak out against social ills and inequalities. This genre is called hip-coup, a combination of American hip-hop and local dialect known as colloqua.
From the lead, talk to me. Everybody pot ballin', my back and
Hip coup is a product of both war and peace in Liberia. Every day, these young rappers either see or experience injustice and social inequalities in their backyards, and the rhythms in their songs rooted in their fears, anger, and distrust of the system, as this ones explain.
The struggle keep killing me, I ain't even got job. I got to hustle hard to buy my baby rubber dog. The economic system by Bojang Jnr, poverty was growing high, so I got to...
I'm Dr. C, representing the MOR rap crew. We preach politics, music. In reality, our people respond to it because they know that the things they go through every day, every night. When you go anywhere in the country, you'll find people dying with poverty, you'll find people dying, no health care, there is no good living condition.
JB, I represent So Fresh, the best hip hop group in Liberia right now. Most of our messages relate to an issue that affect the local people in the street, especially on a daily basis, be it social, political, and what have you, but it relate to, the local people who don't have that opportunity to do most of these things because they sit home and don't have jobs, so they listen to the radio. So most of our messages relate to them.
Hip coup is considered by many Liberians as the soundtrack of the decade-long conflict in Liberia and the daily hustle of the people. And today, the artists are as popular and influential as their music. Miata Fambule is a veteran Liberian singer popularly referred to as the Doyen Diva of Liberian music. She explains how the young hip coup artists took over the baton of leadership and prominence in Liberian music.
The period of the 60s, we were just coming into the business, etc. Most of the message was about having a really good time. The regular I love you, you love me, traditional songs, love songs, and dance songs. By the mid-70s, society started to feel a little pang in terms of economic decline. More voices were raised as compared to the injustice, social injustice. So you find a lot of the music of the 70s from the artists talking about unity, because it was like we felt the pot was boiling, and before the top came off, we were trying to subdue. I always say we didn't listen, because the 80s erupted. And when the 80s came, we were stuck with a military regime. And for any of the artists, real creative artists who want to take a stand during a military regime, it's not the best thing to do. Then, of course, we had to deal with the 90s. The 90s was about the war, was about the destruction, Liberian artists calling for peace. In fact, the Alpha Blondies, Sonny Okosun, all of them came on board to sing for peace in Liberia. And by 2000, when we were coming to the end of the war, now from 2003, we've had the evolution of the new hip-hop artists.
From the east to the west, west to the north, from the north to the south, from the air to the ground to the land, straight back to the sea.
The redemptive messages put across by the hip coup artists hold an appeal to the young generation as well as those who are starting to come of age in the shadow of Liberia's civil war. It attracts the already embittered young people who are distrustful of the political system they have. They can easily relate to not just the beats of hip coup, but also the messages that take on especially the out-of-touch politicians. According to Miata, these messages are fueled by the personal experiences of the artists.
For most of these young people, they see unemployment on a large scale. They see abject poverty because they're living within the ghettos or off the ghettos. They see an inequality within the system. Thousands of their friends have no jobs. They're just wandering. They're just in a vacuum. So you're getting a lot of their sentiments in the music of a lot of the young artists today. The disparity between the rich and poor is very large. We have not been able to deal with the issues yet of young people. Our children are not happy in begging. They want to be able to work, earn a living, where they can take care of themselves and even help their families.
Most of the hip coup artists come from broken homes or no home at all. Oftentimes when they sing, the message is aggressive or offensive. And because of this, many people, especially the politicians they attack, are put off by their music. But most of the producers are not interested in censoring their client. One of them is this man.
I'm Tony Kabade. I'm a musical engineer and a producer. I've been playing professional music like from 84, 85 when I left high school. People express their feeling the way they express them. So some people, they want to give you what is happening in the street there. So they give it in the street language. So some artists will tell you how to feel and about it. They give you a raw as it is. So for me, I don't like to censor anybody's music. I like to express a feeling, but just make sure that for the young people, be moderate and be to the point, sing constructive music, give good messages out there. If it's about issue, hit the issue. If it's about corruption, sing it against corruption.
They call me reap what it never sow. Call me eat the food that a man never cook.
Sounds of Liberian redemption genre hip coup. Now time for sports. We start with Morocco, where the national football team, the Atlas Lions, Tuesday received the hero's welcome upon their return home after they exceeded everyone's wildest expectations and finished fourth at the World Cup in Qatar. Morocco became the first African and Arab country to reach a World Cup semi-final. Tens of thousands of jubilant Moroccans welcomed their national team on Tuesday with fans packed squares and lined up along avenues and streets in and around Rabat. The president of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has expressed optimism that an African nation would reach the World Cup final in 2026. Dr. Patrice Motsepe was speaking Wednesday as he reflected on what he said was the continent's successful campaign in Qatar. The South African believes Morocco's pioneering run to the 2022 World Cup semi-finals has laid groundwork regarding both belief and ambition ahead of the next finals.
These are indeed proud moments and a proud period for football on the African continent, taking into account the performance of all of our five national teams that were representing Africa at the FIFA World Cup Qatar, and in particular the historic achievements of Morocco that has made all of us exceptionally proud. There's approximately 10 nations in Africa now that can compete at the highest level in the world and win. But I have to say, we have to encourage every single one of the 54 nations in Africa.
Dr. Patrice Motsepe, the president of the Confederation of African Football, CAF. Zambia has appointed former Chelsea boss Avram Grant as the head coach of the national football team. Grant, who has signed a 2-year deal with an option to extend, also managed English Premiership clubs Portsmouth and West Ham. His time in England was mostly notable for leading Chelsea to the 2008 Champions League final, which they lost on penalties to Manchester United. The Israeli also steered Portsmouth to the 2010 FA Cup final, which they lost 1-0 to Chelsea. But he was in charge of Portsmouth and West Ham when they were both relegated from the Premier League. Grant has previously experienced managing in Africa, having led Ghana to the final at the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations, where they were beaten on penalties by Ivory Coast. He resigned after Ghana finished fourth in the same competition 2 years later. At a press conference in the Zambian capital Lusaka, Grant said he chose Zambia because it was the right challenge. Now time for our special guest segment. If you can dream it, you can do it. This is according to Walt Disney, a pioneer of the American animation industry. It's as if that quote was made specifically for a young Senegalese man who became a celebrity entrepreneur and global brand by just living a dream that once seemed to be a pipe dream. John Nyang, a native of Kaolack in Senegal, was born in a modest family of 28 children. He migrated to the US in 2000 after being inspired by the story of Kofi Annan, the late Ghanaian-born diplomat who served as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations. But before that, John had applied for a US visa 3 times without success, and when he finally got the visa, it took him 5 long months to buy the plane ticket. He arrived in the US with only $20 in his pocket and hardly any understanding of the English language, and worked his way through the hard way, cleaning tables and floors at hotels. Fast forward the story to about 6 years, John made a name for himself as grassroots elections campaigner and youth mobilizer for multiple American politicians. That new stardom propelled him to national stage when he was appointed officially as a community organizer for Barack Obama in the historic 2008 presidential elections. He became national co-chair of Obama's Young Supporters Gen 44 for his 2012 re-election campaign. For the next 4 years, John became personally closer to Obama, working closely with him and advising his administration. In 2009, John founded the Give One Project, a global organization that promotes global leadership and entrepreneurship for young people. In 2014, he co-founded Akon Lighting Africa and Selectra International, along with the renowned global artist Akon and Malian businessman Samba Bachili. John is also the founder of Jeff Zone Farms to address the agricultural need of Africa. John Nyang is this week's special guest.
Like many immigrants come to the United States for opportunity, a better life, and hope. Those are the kind of things that drive people to the U.S., and I was an exception for that. I grew up in Senegal, in Medina Bay, Kaolack, with a large family of 28 kids. My father had 3 wives, and we didn't have money, so you can understand the struggle growing up. Then from there, in my 7th grade, my teacher was just talking about the story of Kofi Annan and how he left Ghana and went to the United States. He studied there, and things worked out for him. And he worked his way up to becoming the General Secretary of the United Nations. That story alone inspired me to dream big and also follow the steps of Kofi at that time. My classmates used to ask me, what you want to be? I say, I want to be like Kofi. And I never met him at that time. It was just like...
And the first time you heard of him was when your teacher
talked about him. I was very seduced by the story. So I started to look into ways to go to the U.S. I was very young.
When you went 2000, the visa you had, that was your 4th try. You had 3 failed visa applications.
That is correct. I've tried. And then I failed. And the 4th time they gave me the visa was January 18th with the student visa. I remember coming to the 4th window of the embassy. When they called my name, there was an older guy. I was in an edge at the time because I tried everything that I could just to get a shot so I can help my family, I can follow my education. And my inspiration was my mother, so I really wanted to help her, but I couldn't.
And all this happened within 2 years, 4 applications within 2 years?
Exactly.
And you kept failing. You failed 3 times. What kept you going?
Because of the love, again, and the hope, and what was burning me inside to succeed because of the conditions that my mama was living in, and I wanted to change to help her. But again, when I came to the window, the guy looked at me. He's an older guy from Florida. I never will forget his face. He's an older guy with a white barber, and he told me, you want to go to the United States? I said, yes. Then I started to cry. For almost 5 minutes, I just broke down. He asked me, what's wrong? I said, all I just need is a chance, man. I've been trying so hard to get a break so I can help my mother, I can help my family, I can create a future for myself. And it's almost impossible here because I don't have nobody who can pull a string for me. I just need a chance. Please give me a chance, a shot. I promise you I will do good.
And he did.
And he said, come at 4 o'clock, I'll give you a break.
Do you think the fact that you cried played a part in the guy giving you...
No, I don't think... Well, I just was very tired. I was very tired. You know how you try, and then you don't have no more ways, like all the doors are shut. I was in that That's what I was saying. I was on the edge. I was just broke down unexpectedly. And he knew that, this young child just need a break when I talked to him. But I had all of my papers straight. I didn't have nothing.
And how did you, what went on in your mind when he asked you to come back?
At 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
I was pleased. But then I knew there was another struggle coming, though. Because the whole time I was working on the visa, I forgot to deal with the ticket, though. So I have the visa January 18th that evening. January, February, March, April, till May 25th, I couldn't find the ticket. 5 months in the country. Believe me, on those 5 months, every single day on those 5 months, we go somewhere, we hurt somebody, I have some money, me and my mom. And we borrowed, and they said no. All I heard is no for 5 months. In the point where I didn't believe that there was luck to follow my education.
You have your visa, but no money to go for it.
Exactly. You need a ticket to get in.
And how did you purchase the ticket eventually?
Well, finally, a cousin, friend, Dao, who came in from Japan, a friend of the family, came in vacation, and my mom called him, and we borrowed the money from him, and that's when those $20 left, and he dropped me at the airport. That's how I made it to the U.S.
Have you paid that money back?
Oh yeah, I paid it the first year. The first year I came back with students from Cleveland to bring them to my former high school. We brought some computers, and I took care of that.
And what happened? What was the feeling like when you arrived in the United States? Did you realize that, the American dream that brought me here is here, it's finally here?
First of all, it was like a cultural shock when I first got to the U.S. Because I had these dreams of what America is like by television, and never been there. I kind of imaginated what U.S. I created America in my head, and when I landed in New York, I was a little bit disappointed.
What did you create? What was the creation? Your mental picture?
I created this unbelievable place that's like this place that almost doesn't exist, like extra beautiful, the same things we see on television. And then when I landed in the Bronx, I see garbage. I see, the same regular things that I see in the U.S. Senegal, I see homeless people. I was like, wow, man, this is not what I was expecting, So it was the culture shock. And then the English that I was learning here, is when they're talking, they was very fast. So I couldn't barely understand what they were saying. And it was another culture shock. And then the family's not around. But I knew, though, on the first day, this is a place for me that I'm going to make a difference. This is a place where I'm going to create a future for me and my family.
And one of the first jobs that you took up in the U.S.
I was cleaning tables, and I was just cleaning tables like many of us do.
And John, let's talk about your political activism. Where did that start? You campaigned for so many politicians, and eventually in the Barack Obama campaign fundraising team, shaking hands with the president, talking with the president. Where did that whole start?
I started to volunteer in campaigns. I started to go to city council to learn how politics is made in the official level between the president, the mayor, and the city council for 1 year.
That's every Monday for a whole year.
Every Monday I've done that. I've built relationships over there. I've volunteered to help on campaigns. And once I was finished volunteering, then people getting to notice me, because somebody is watching you everywhere. Nowhere. It doesn't matter where you go. There's somebody there that's watching you. So
it was like a trial for you. There you have to put all your best out.
Then you never know who's going to make the first phone call to come to help you. Then I had a call from, after we won the campaign with my friend Kevin Cameroon, the councilman in Cleveland. And there is also the mayor of Cleveland, Frank Jackson, who I was, in his first elections, I was the youth coordinator. And then one of her friends, state representative then, Shirley Smith, was running for Senate. And she approached me to run her campaign, and I agreed to do it. Then we won that campaign. It was pretty tough. Then I made a name for myself. And then people started talking about this young African guy. And I ran for the Young Democrats of Cuyahoga County, which is the biggest county in Ohio. And Ohio is a very important state for elections in the United States. And then I became the first black to be the president of that county. And then I got involved nationally with the Young Democrats of America, got elected as the national chair of the College Caucus in 2007. 2006, I was the vice chair. 2007, I was the president. And luckily, President Obama met him in 2006 and 2007.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. After all this, political activism, campaigning for all these people, you eventually find yourself in the Obama campaign circle. How did that happen?
It didn't happen overnight. It happens within work. And then when I met him in 2006, he was a senator and just knew. And then 2007, he decided to run. I met him again in February. The first one was it was a meeting with the Young Democrats. The DNC was having a meeting, actually. And then the Young Democrats were invited in that. It was in the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. I met him. I had him sign my book for me. And then, we've had a brief talk. He asked me about my accent, where I'm from. He
was Illinois senator.
At that time, yes.
Let's move on to your participation into his campaign, his presidential campaign.
Well, my participation is from the beginning, because before we even started hiring people, I was on the ground talking to people about President Obama. I remember after Springfield, the announcement, he came to D.C., and it was a D.C. gathering there, the DNC, when I was in the Democratic National Committee. All the so-called candidates, Edwards, Clinton, President Obama, they all had to come and speak, Richardson, the Governor Richardson, all of them. Joe Biden.
New Mexico.
Yeah, Joe Biden, the vice president. They're all candidates, And Dennis Kucinich, Congressman of Ohio, also, 10th District. They all came and they spoke in front of the Democratic Party. We were there. And a few of my friends now, Ken Whitaker's wife, LaKisha, and they were twins, both of them, and I were with President Obama. We wanted to create a table because we walked in there. Everybody had hats and T-shirts for Hillary Clinton. We don't have nothing for President Obama, nothing. You didn't even have a table, so we had to create a table, create some lists here, and ask people to sign up. And people will walk and they laugh at us. They're like, you guys really think this guy going to be president?
Because at the beginning it was like a fairy tale.
Exactly. They were really laughing at us. And I still always remember that. I was like, wow, it's funny with life when you can dream how possibility can come.
Your father had 3 wives and you had a bunch of siblings. And when you were young, eventually you were moved, to live with your grandfather because your father was physically abusive to your mother.
A lot of things involved, It wasn't easy for me, It was very rough. It was tough. Grow up. Very hard conditions, and my mom was that force of inspiration because every day I look at her and her suffering and going through the things she had to go through, because I know that I know the struggle of the people in Africa.
That was Chon Nyang, our special guest and celebrity Senegalese entrepreneur and global brand. With that, we come to the end of this edition of your Week in Review program, Africa This Week, on Home Digital 99.9 FM. I'm your producer and presenter, Bojang Jnr. Thanks for your company and join me the same time next week for another edition of the program. Africa This Week, a new program that features and analyzes all the top news and events that took place across the continent during the week, is coming on Home Digital FM. The 1 hour Week in Review program will exhibit experts and commentators to look back on the news of the past 7 days and break down stories and issues across Africa that everyone is talking about. Africa This Week will feature Guest of the Week and engage people at the center of every key news, every story, in the best interactive, entertaining and informative way possible. Africa This Week on Home Digital FM 99.9 every Saturday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. starting from next Saturday, October 22nd. Africa This Week with me, Bojang Jnr. See you there.
FM 99.9 in Brikama Town. For all the businessmen and women, move out of the darkness, follow the light. Come sell your business with us today. Home Digital FM, let your customers know what you're offering. Be on top of your competitors. Home Digital FM, we will help you stand out. Come advertise with us today for all your businesses. We offer live program coverage both on Facebook Live and on the radio. Exos to sell your products and services. The media is in control. Tell your customers when, where, and how to meet you through Home Digital FM. Don't worry. Do your business. We will sell you out. Call us today on 734-3125 or 200-5770 620-1413 766-8394. Home Digital FM. Follow the light.